Welcome to Trending at 10. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. Now, it's not often you see such an outcry on social media, but then consider this. 28 lakh students are affected after the Central Board of Secondary Education, or CBSE, announced today that it was going to conduct the Class 10 Maths exam and the Class 12 Economics exam again. For 16 lakh students, the mathematics examination, for many perhaps their worst nightmare, will now be repeated, though no new date has been announced yet. For Class 12 students, many of whom are also appearing for other competitive examinations, there is now the additional headache of an economics exam to sit for yet again. We asked tonight, should students have to suffer because the CBSE cannot ensure the free and fair conduct of examinations? That, of course, is the big trend right across social media today. But also trending tonight, if you thought the ICC's one-match ban and fine on Stephen Smith and David Warner was too mild, has Cricket Australia taken it to the other extreme with a one-year playing ban and a lifetime captaincy ban for David Warner. They will also miss out on IPL 2018. That's been confirmed by the IPL chairman. We ask, is this fair punishment for admitting to ball tampering or too harsh? That's coming up later on in the show. But it's been an absolute shocker of a day for lakhs of school students across the country, not to mention their parents. The CBSE announcing that the two board examinations for Class 10 Maths and Class 12 Economics will have to be conducted again after copies of the question papers were doing the rounds on WhatsApp. A storm of petitions against this re-examination already underway.
Just this morning, first-time board exam takers from Class 10th emerged from their mathematics paper, relieved about putting it behind them. But not for long. The CBSE said they must take the exam again.
And if over 16 lakh students will retake this exam, many from the 12 lakh students taking the Class 12th exam will sit again for their economics paper. The economics exam was held on the 26th of March, described as one of average difficulty. This year, interestingly, the CBSE had changed the marking scheme, introducing a practical component of 20 marks, which meant the theory paper was conducted for 80 marks. According to reports, a major chunk of the questions asked in the Class 10th maths paper were from NCERT books. Students said the exam was easier compared to other exams this year, although lengthy. CBSE only cited happenings, but allegations of leaks erupted when images of handwritten question papers started circulating on WhatsApp and social media. Similar allegations were raised over an accounts paper held on the 15th of March, but no re-exam has been mentioned for that yet.
Because of the leakage of the paper and the CBSE's fault, we have to, all the people who haven't struggled for these many days have to re-write the exam.
The paper was easy. Confirm the next time the paper will be tough, we are expecting.
It was not really easy to study maths, and studying it once more and writing an exam once more, it will be difficult.
Coming just after the row over the SSC paper leak, it's more bad news for India students.
सीबीएसई के पेपर लीक के मामले की हमने बहुत गंभीरता से संज्ञान लिया है। पीएम को हर घटना पर उस पर उनको पूरी जानकारी देते ही है।
Both the CBSE and the Education Ministry have put the blame on local miscreants or gangs for the leaks, asserting that the CBSE is not at fault. Only a police investigation, however, can absolve the board of any wrongdoing. In New Delhi, this is Nimsha Jaswal for NDTV.
All right, let's take this right across to the people perhaps most affected by it. Joining us on the show tonight, Vandana Chawla, principal of New Era Public School, Rakhi Mehra, a parent, and Ishita, her daughter, a Class 10 student, who in fact sat that mathematics examination, also joining us. Ishita, I want to come straight to you. When did you hear about the fact that you'd have to repeat the maths exam that you did just this very morning again? And, how did you feel at that point?
Ma'am, initially it was actually a huge shock. We came home and I actually was so tired that I went off to sleep as soon as I came back home. Right. And I woke up at around 7:45 and my mom tried to break that news to me subtly because she thought that, it would create a shock, and it did actually. And at 7:45 I realized that I have to give the maths paper again.
So, tell me, this is the first board examination in a sense that CBSE students are giving in a long time. Isn't that right, Ishita? So, yes. There was that added level of stress for you in any case. And now you know that, you know, just on the day that you thought your exams were over, you're going to have to do another exam and you don't know when that's going to be.
Yes, ma'am, there's actually a lot of stress which comes with the preparation of the exam, as well as sitting in the exam and then waiting for your result. This stress, and no student wants to go through that stress yet again when they have to give the retest.
All right, Vandana Chawla, you know, who should we blame at this point? Because, of course, there are many now who are saying heads must roll in the Central Board of Secondary Education. This was brought up last week when the economics paper in particular, there were many who talked about how they had received WhatsApp images of handwritten questions that matched, in fact, with the paper when it was when people finally sat for it and so on. At the time, the CBSE said there had been no leak. A week later, they seemed to be acknowledging that there was, in fact, a leak, not just there, but perhaps something to do with the maths exam as well, though they haven't confirmed that. What do you think needs to, who do we now hold accountable for this?
Well, considering the fact that CBSE is the premier examination body in the country, and they are the ones who are in charge of this examination, the responsibility definitely rests very clearly at their door. So they cannot wash their hands off, you know, the situation and say that there's some miscreants involved in the leakage of the paper. I mean, that's just bizarre to say some miscreants are involved.
Right.
They have to have a foolproof system. I'm sure a lot of people know that, you know, in the US, when a jury is called, it stays sequestered for months together. So, I mean, they have to find where the loopholes are. They have to plug those loopholes, because it is a source of tremendous trauma for parents. Lakhs, as you're saying, about 16 lakh students are appearing for the exam. And think of
16 lakhs for the class 10 exam and another 12 odd lakhs for the class 12. So together that's a whopping 28 lakhs. Now, I want to take this across, of course, to the concerned parent on the show. Now, Rakhi, how do you feel at this point, given the fact that, you know, obviously this leak, even though this is very serious, was obviously something that was fairly localized, because even the CBSE seems to have indicated that this was something that was carried out by local gangs or miscreants in Delhi. But there are students across India who are going to be suffering 28 lakhs. Now, that's no small number. How do you as a parent see this?
Yeah, well, being a parent, I must say one thing, you know, like, when you have to just reveal that yes, beta, you are doing good job, but your board is not doing good job. Like board has insisted this board examination first time in 10th, this time every month they have done some training regarding this or that, and lots of unit tests, pre-board and board. Right. And after that, so much rigorous, you know, training for the students. And still board was not prepared. He has not, it is had not kept security of their confidential, the most confidential papers. This is the one thing. So we are saying sorry to children, and I must say this is the wrong lesson. So you feel you're having to,
yes, you feel you're having to apologize, whereas really it should be the CBSE at this point that ought to be apologizing for putting students through this kind of stress again. Now, Vandana Chawla, we heard the Education Minister today hold this very long press conference where actually he started talking about the violence in Bengal and so on, and he talked about a lot of other things before he started answering questions. And also these were questions that were then put to him by reporters on the CBSE paper leak and so on. So do you believe that perhaps this an issue of priorities that needs to be addressed over here, given that the future of 28 lakh students are involved?
Absolutely. According to me, every time something like this happens, we, you know, try and digress from the main issue, and we politicize, you know, whatever is happening. Even right now, you know, the way everybody is talking about the CBSE, and everybody is talking about the minister or the prime minister. I think nobody is really addressing the situation that what is the process? What exactly is the process, how a paper is set, where is it printed, where does the leak take place, where do these things happen? Until and unless those are addressed, I'm afraid these things are going to keep happening again and again.
I think that's a very important point that you raised, Vandana Chawla, simply because, you know, despite the fact that the CBSE, of course, has refused to answer any of our calls today or agreed to come on this program, one critical question is how much of this is outsourced? Because, you know, can the CBSE in fact assure us that every step of this process is controlled by them, or at some point are these question papers sent to be printed, etc., and are those the points where there are chinks in the armor, as it were? Because again, you know, how can you play around with the future of 28 lakh students?
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, you know, that's exactly the point. I was doing some research on my way here. And the setting of the paper is a process that is pretty good, you know, it's very foolproof, and one person is not setting the paper. There's a group of people, each one not knowing the identity of the other paper. There are moderators who are completely different from the paper setters. There are people who make the blueprints and the marking scheme who are again different from the moderators and the paper setters. But nowhere did it say what happens to the question paper once it is set. Right. Whose custody does it go into? What happens? Where is it printed? What are the stages through which it goes before it ends up in that package that comes to our school? I mean, there are flying squads coming to our schools to check whether we are ensuring, you know, all the rules are being followed. CBSE has now sent us an observer every day, and I'm sure that they're sending it to every school. They're taking pictures of us, opening the papers with the timestamp on the, you know, mobile phone, etc., right, and then uploading all that information to them. I mean, all that's very well, but the leak has already taken place because it doesn't happen at that time. For example, for the economics paper, the information that I have is that the economics paper was being circulated in a handwritten form the day before. So my point is that the leak has taken place way before the papers actually been held in the schools.
All right. I want to ask Ishita at this point, you know, there's been talk about other paper leaks also. Are you worried at this point that, you know, you might have to repeat other examinations as well? And if at this point you had to give a message, I know a lot of people are already petitioning the board saying that, you know, why should we be made to suffer? What would be your sort of, you know, if you had a chance to speak to the Central Board of Secondary Education right now, what would your message be?
It honestly doesn't really matter how many number of tests or retests we actually give. What matters is, because we've prepared for this throughout the year, and if we're preparing this, we should be ready for every test we're giving. However, the CBSE really needs to ensure that they maintain the security of these question papers, and that it doesn't get leaked, because there are people who are preparing and who really like putting their 100% into the paper and don't want to go through that stress level again.
Right. And Vandana Chawla, quick last question. I mean, Ishita, of course, is in class 10, so therefore, you know, she's repeating this exam, but she doesn't need to worry about other competitive exams. For those of your students who are in class 12, who will now have to sit the economics paper again at the same time that they're also appearing for these competitive exams, which will determine which colleges they get into and will really sort of, you know, determine their lives in a way. What happens to them?
Well, the fact of the matter is, it's like, you know, a domino effect. The minute the CBSE exam gets postponed, it interferes with the schedules of various other exams. So I'm pretty sure that the government will step in and then, you know, pull strings here and speak to this, you know, ministry or this organization. But just think of the upset that it causes in hundreds and thousands and lakhs of homes where children who have spent not just 1 year or 2 years, actually some of the children have been preparing for this day since they started school. You know, they have this dream of really shining in these exams, and then this happens, and it sends such a bad message even internationally. I mean, I was just thinking about it. If, you know, this news, obviously this is international news, if it's trending all over the place.
Yes.
What if a child goes to a university out of this country with a mark sheet which is from Delhi, from the CBSE, I mean, people are going to look at it askance and say, well, you know, this is a board that cannot really be trusted. You know, so you have these marks, we really don't know whether you deserve these marks or not. I mean, there are so many unanswered questions at this stage. Right. And I think it's just very tragic.
Very tragic indeed, and the CBSE presumably has a lot to answer for. We only hope that this probe will in fact fix some accountability. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time, so I'll have to thank you for joining us on this discussion tonight, Rakhi, Vandana and Ishita. Thank you for being with us and sharing your concerns.